Every culture on Earth, across every recorded period of human history, has independently invented the same character. Typically old, wise, slightly mysterious, possesses knowledge the hero desperately needs, and almost always, not immediately, but eventually, gone. The details change, the name changes, the mythology changes, but the structure is identical from ancient Sumer to modern streaming services. Every civilization that has ever existed looked up at the unknown and independently decided, there should be someone who knows more than us. Someone who can explain what is coming. Someone who can tell us what to do. The question I want to investigate is not who that character is. It's what that universal need reveals about the people who keep inventing them. Let's catalog what we're actually dealing with. Because the mentor archetype is not just a storytelling device, it is a reoccurring obsession. Merlin, King Arthur's advisor, ancient and cryptic, appears when Arthur needs direction, disappears when Arthur needs to act alone. He does not fight Arthur's battles, he prepares Arthur to fight them. And then in most versions of the legend, he is imprisoned or vanishes, leaving Arthur to proceed without him. Chiron the centaur, trainer of Achilles, Heracles, Jason, Asclepius. Essentially every significant Greek hero passed through his cave at some point. Half man, half horse, immortal but eventually wounded in a way that cannot be healed. He chooses to give up his immortality to end his suffering. The wisest being in the Greek world opts out of existing rather than continue in diminished form.
Winston, my friend, you just described my Uncle Trevor, wise man, also half horse, spiritually speaking, also chose to opt out for different reasons.
I'm going to pretend I didn't hear that.
The man taught me everything I know about card games and then disappeared into a rum bar in 1987. Classic mentor arc.
I will acknowledge the structural similarity and let's move on. Move forward through time. Obi-Wan Kenobi, introduced as a hermit living at the edge of a desert planet, deliberately removed from the world. He knows more than he immediately shares. He gives Luke exactly enough guidance to begin, and then removes himself from the equation entirely by stepping into Vader's blade. Gandalf the Grey falls in Moria, returns as Gandalf the White. The mentor in Tolkien's universe does not simply guide, he is transformed by the cost of guiding. The wisdom was not free, it was paid for somewhere. Uncle Iroh from Avatar The Last Airbender, a man who lost his son, abandoned conquest, and spent years becoming something entirely different from what power made him. His guidance to Zuko is not tactical. It is the distilled residual of a man who did everything wrong and survived the consequences long enough to understand them. Jiraiya, Naruto's teacher, spends years searching for a child of prophecy, trains Naruto with a genuine affection, dies on a mission that matters. His death is the moment the series stops being about a boy who wants to be noticed and becomes about a young man who must decide what to do with that loss. The mentor in every iteration is not simply the person who teaches the hero. They are the person whose absence forces the hero to become real. And that detail is going to matter in just a moment. Joseph Campbell documented the mentor figure as a universal component of what he called the hero's journey. The monomyth. The pattern appears so consistently across unconnected cultures that Campbell argued it wasn't coincidence. It was architecture, something embedded in how human beings construct meaning narratively. Carl Jung called the archetype the wise old man. In his framework, it represents the self's access to deeper knowledge, the part of the psyche that contains more understanding than the conscious ego currently possesses. The mentor in fiction is, by this reading, the hero's own unconscious wisdom given external face, which is a polite way of saying, we invented the mentor because we needed somewhere to put the knowledge we don't yet have.
Well, that is either very deep or very concerning. I'm not sure which.
Both, typically. That's where the interesting things live. The mechanism works like this. The hero at the start of any story is incomplete. They have potential, but lack direction. They have instinct, but lack understanding. They have the will to act, but not the wisdom to act correctly. The mentor provides a bridge, not from ignorance to knowledge, but from potential to readiness. Critically, the mentor never completes the journey for them. This is structural, not incidental. Gandalf does not destroy the ring. Dumbledore does not defeat Voldemort. Rayleigh does not fight the world government. Master Roshi does not win the World Martial Arts Tournament. The mentor's function is specifically bounded. They can show the door, but they cannot walk through it. And the moment the mentor does more than they are structurally permitted to do, the story breaks. not metaphorically, actually breaks. The hero becomes passive, the audience stops caring, the narrative loses the engine that drives it. The mentor's limitation is not a flaw in this archetype, it is the archetype's entire point. There is a version of this that is considerably darker than it currently appears. We'll come back to that. Here's where the investigation changes direction. We have been talking about the mentor as a narrative device, a storytelling tool, a recurring character type that cultures independently invented because stories need them structurally. But that framing assumes the mentor is something humans put into stories. What if it's something humans put into stories because they cannot stop looking for it in reality? The mentor archetype does not just appear in fiction. It appears in the way people relate to teachers, bosses, therapists, religious figures, philosophers, online personalities, and self-help authors. The structure is identical. Someone who seems to know more than you, who can see further, who can translate the chaos of experience into something navigable, whose guidance you seek and whose approval consciously or not you want. The mentor in fiction is not an invention, it is a reflection of something the audience is already doing, already wanting, already in many cases, already missing. The appeal of the mentor figure maps almost exactly onto the development psychology of a specific and formative experience, childhood. Every human being begins in a state of complete dependency on people who know more. Parents, teachers, older siblings, the adults in the room. For the first significant portion of a human life, guidance is not optional. It is the condition of survival. You are steered, you are corrected, and you are told what the world means and how to move through it. And then gradually, that structure is withdrawn. Adulthood arrives, and the expectation reverses. You are now the one who should know, the one who should have figured it out, the one who should be able to navigate without someone older pointing the way. Most people are not ready for this. Most people are not told this explicitly. It simply arrives, and they are expected to manage.
Hold on. Are you describing the mentor archetype? Or are you describing the moment you left home at 18 Man?
The investigation does not require personal data tunes.
I remember that day clearly. You cried at the ferry terminal. Very quietly, but still.
Okay, let's just continue. The mentor in fiction offers something adulthood largely removes: legitimate permission to still learn. The hero is not stupid for needing guidance. They are not weak for not knowing. The mentor validates the not knowing as a stage rather than a failure. And the audience watching receives that validation alongside the hero. You are allowed to not have figured it out yet. There is still someone who can help. The wisdom you need exists. It is just ahead of you, not behind. That is an extraordinarily comforting thought, particularly for people who are quietly certain they should be further along than they are, which is most people, almost all the time. The mentor figure does not just represent wisdom. It represents the continued possibility of becoming, the assurance that growth is not closed, that it is not too late. The mentor always leaves. This is not a narrative accident. It is the story's most honest observation about what guidance actually is and is not. Gandalf falls in Moria, Dumbledore dies, Obi-Wan steps into the blade, Jiraiya goes to face pain alone, Uncle Iroh ends up in the tea shop and declines to follow Zuko into the final battle. The Firekeeper in Dark Souls can be killed by the player, and some players do it, and the game quietly continues without her. The mentor leaves because if they stayed, the hero would never have become anything. The hero would wait. The hero would defer. The hero would stand permanently in the shadow of someone who knows better and call it wisdom, which is comfortable and which is its own form of failure. Here is the uncomfortable implication, the thing the mentor archetype has always been quietly arguing, in every iteration across every culture. The guidance you are looking for is temporary by design, not because the mentor abandons you, because the mentor's entire function is to make themselves unnecessary. The wisdom is not the end point. The ability to proceed without it is. Real guidance from a parent, a teacher, a coach, anyone who is doing it correctly, is always working towards its own obsolescence. The point is never to create dependency. The point is to create capacity, and then step back and let the capacity be used.
Winston, that was actually genuinely beautiful. I wasn't expecting that.
Don't get sentimental. There's a darker layer.
Of course there is. Go ahead.
The danger of the mentor archetype is what happens when people stop looking for the real version and accept a counterfeit. The internet has produced an extraordinary number of people willing to position themselves as the wise guide. The person who has seen clearly. The person who knows what the initiated don't. The person whose knowledge, if you just follow them long enough, will finally explain the world to you. Some of them are genuine. Most are just selling the feeling of being guided rather than the capacity to guide yourself. And the feeling is close enough to the real thing that it is very difficult to tell the difference from inside it. The difference between a real mentor and a counterfeit one is this: the real one is trying to make you not need them. The counterfeit is trying to make you need them more. Dumbledore did not tell Harry everything. He gave Harry exactly what Harry needed to find the rest himself. That is the structure. That is what it looks like when it's working correctly. A mentor who tells you everything, who explains every step, who is always available, who never expects you to proceed without them, is not a mentor. They are dependency dressed as wisdom's clothing. We invented the mentor because we are, at our core, creatures who understand that we cannot figure everything out alone. That is not weakness, that is accurate self-assessment. But the mentor in every story eventually leaves, not as tragedy, as completion. The hero does not mourn forever. The hero walks through the door the mentor showed them and becomes eventually the person a younger version of themselves would have looked up at. The archetype is not about the mentor. It was about who you become when they're gone.
My Uncle Trevor would have liked that.
The rumbar uncle?
He was a complicated man, Winston. Very wise. Gone too soon. Left me his card tricks. And his debts. Classic.
Here's my question to you before you go. Not about fiction. Think about the mentor figure you've been looking for. Or one you already found. The teacher, the author, the older person, the voice online, the parent, or the one who was supposed to be. Are they teaching you to need them less or more? Leave your answers below. I'll be reading. And if this case file interests you, Case File 23 on this channel investigates a character who had a mentor, ignored him, and became the most catastrophically powerful figure in his galaxy as a result. Anakin Skywalker. Let's investigate what 2 decades of his story actually reveals about people who find his rise and fall relatable.